What is up, YouTube? Coach Kolton here, bringing you physique development tools, skills, and opinions that hopefully you can use for yourself to make some gains. Today in this video, I am hopefully going to be uncovering LEILA HORMOZI'S steroid cycle. Many of you may not be familiar with LEILA HORMOZI. She is Alex Hormozi's wife, and Alex Hormozi is a wild influencer at this point. Very, very prolific within the business, entrepreneurial, self-improvement space. Came out with a new book, has written one called $100 Million Offers, is out there like crazy, and so is LEILA. She's kind of riding his coattails. She is her own successful woman, owns multiple business, way more successful than I could ever be, but she is kind of garnering attention through a lot of what he is doing as well. Her following is like a ratio of 1 to 4 of his, and there's obviously like a disposition there. Now, the important thing to realize is that Alex Hormozi himself, and I'm going to be putting up pictures and videos as I'm talking, has gone through a pretty radical transformation and claims to be completely void of any steroid use in his life, but yet he says that he gained 35 pounds of muscle in 8 weeks, and we can see through some of these photos that he's posted, this dude's definitely been on gear. If this is a natural transformation, I have been doing my entire life incorrectly and need to be doing whatever he was doing, because this shit looks like someone has been using 1,000 milligrams of testosterone for at least 2 years. At least. This didn't happen in 8 weeks. And I could be someone who is completely wild and off my ass, and maybe Alex Hormozi is just a singular genetic hyper-responder that is better than any genetic elite individual or the best natural bodybuilder that I have personally ever seen, who currently, if we pulled up his picture, is pretty jacked. Sure, but Alex Hormozi is definitely looking bigger in the pictures that he's been posting, and so if you're bigger than the natural Olympian, there's definitely something to be scratching your head about. So let's just say that maybe Alex Hormozi is a hyper responder and he used a little bit of gear. LEILA HORMOZI has also been in the competitive scene in bodybuilding, and in fact that's how they linked up, through Fitness Connects and getting to know each other through the fitness world. And you might be surprised to know that LEILA HORMOZI even competed in bikini back in 2015 and had a very competitive career outside of that, not necessarily in bodybuilding, but in things like CrossFit and definitely powerlifting movements, but I don't think she ever competed. So now there's these videos popping up about people talking about LEILA HORMOZI being a trans woman, and I just want to completely squash that. She is completely straight. She is completely biologically a woman, and you could go back way far in her work, which I did, unfortunately, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit here, but she's definitely a female, and the reason people are questioning this is because, one, she's been getting some facial surgeries as of lately. She got a rhinoplasty and her nose changed. She got a lip job. I think she got buccal fat pad removals, all these different things which kind of changed her face, right? If you go back to like 2015, she looks a lot different. Now people are starting to use that in correlation with her voice being extremely deep. To be honest, she has the key traits of secondary male characteristics for women who use androgens, and this is making people think that she is actually a transvestite. I'm going to completely hypothesize here and put my tail on the line and say that LEILA HORMOZI is absolutely not a transvestite. In fact, she was someone who was an early partaker in the use of androgenic anabolic steroids and likely some other additives, which I'll talk about here in a second, that contributed to her development of secondary male characteristics, which is the thickening of her larynx and vocal cords, which makes her voice specifically deeper. Now there's also a study I'm going to be tying this into, which is labeled Anabolic Androgenic Steroid Use Among Women, a qualitative study on experiences of masculinizing, gonadal, and sexual effects. This study is pretty good at encapsulating everything that a female might experience abusing anabolic androgenic steroids. And before I even continue too far on this, I am not against females using this. I'm not against LEILA HORMOZI using past use of steroids. I just think it's very important to put this information out. She's not going to do it, obviously, and people are thinking that she's a transvestite at this point, so I think it's probably important that somebody does it. So one of the major changes that a female will experience is voice changes due to the exposure of AAS, and usually that is length of exposure. Voice changes will create social stigmas. They will be basically mistaken for male gender. This is something that the study quotes, is that females will often be mistaken for males undercover, and that voice changes aren't immediately recognized by the female user because, unfortunately, the changes happen over such a long amount of time. So if you have a female who's, let's say, taking Anavar for, I don't know, 24, 30, 60 weeks, she's going to be exposing herself to, specifically if she's using a high enough dose, right? If she's using like 2.5 to maybe 5 milligrams a day, there's other situations that would, lead her to maybe not experience those things. But if she's using, a reckless 10 milligrams, 15, 20, 30 milligrams a day, which is not unheard of, then likely she is going to experience that masculinization across that longer time duration or time of exposure. Really, that's the thing we're looking for at women is dose exposure as opposed to the dose amplitude, right? You can give a girl pretty high doses of primobolan, which we have data on. A female's getting up to 1,200 milligrams of primobolan a week, and it was a very acute period in time that they were exposed to this, and they came out with almost no virilization or secondary male characteristics. A couple complained about clitoral irritation, but that was it. It's really about the length of exposure. So she likely had someone who was a coach and didn't necessarily tell her, hey, you got to get off this stuff at some point. The other changes, it can be clitoral enlargements. Think about it way back into like biology terms. The penis is equivalent to the female clitoris, and essentially when you induce a high degree of androgenic stimulus in that area, you're going to grow essentially a penis. So the thing that I want to talk about is the changes architecturally in LEILA's voice and her appearance, and talk about what she might have been using that got her to that point. Let's start from the genesis of this whole thing. Leila Hormozi has obviously not always been named Leila Hormozi. She came from a father who was an Iranian, similar to actually Alex Hormozi, and her father's name was, and I might mess this up, Kurash Nashini, I believe. He was a mechanical engineer and an author. If you actually look him up, he's done some pretty crazy stuff. It explains why she kind of has this forward motion kind of attitude. She potentially might have one sister, it's not confirmed, but her religion was, as it originated, Muslim, just due to her family. If you look her father up, this will be all revealed. Basically, Leila Hormozi is, if you look her up, her real name is Leila Nashine. I can't pronounce it correctly, I'm sorry, but it's Naghshine. Look that name up. She even has an old Instagram under that name, and it shows you basically everything you need to know. So I wanted to pull up this one specific video, which is 7 years ago, and this is before the Leila Hormozi that we know. This is Leila Nagashine. Maybe I can put this into like Google fucking and ask how to pronounce it. Naghshine. That is how you pronounce it. Naghshine. Okay, thank you, Google. If you look this video up, it is Leila Naghshine, the OmniFit group program coach. It literally is a channel with 171 subscribers. I'm assuming it was a small coaching group. 2K views 7 years ago, and we play this video.
Hi everybody, my name's Leila. I wanted to do a short video to introduce myself as one of the coaches on the OmniFit team. I graduated last year with my degree in exercise science, and
you can tell that her voice is radically different. You can also tell other couple things here. Her breasts are pretty large. Her nose is different, her chin is different, her forehead is a little bit different. And this isn't me being hypercritical, and Leila, if you're watching this, this isn't meant to be any kind of merch to you. It's not that at all. But what you can see is that we have a Leila here that is pre-androgenic anabolic steroid exposure. This is my hypothesis, at least. So you can go ahead and find this video. It's on YouTube now. So now let's fast forward a little bit. I'm gonna go to Leila Naghshine and her bikini competition, which she competed at the NPC Iron Game Championship. So again, this is the NPC. As we know, the NPC is very drug driven. It's not the PNBA where you're getting drug tested. You got to get urine tests. You had to do the test where they hook you up on the machinery and sit you down and ask you a bunch of questions and answer all the questions without the machine saying that you're lying. It's intense. This gal didn't have to do any of that, and likely the competitors around her were partaking in some pharmacological use as well, but I'm imagining this is a part of the common norm, and some of her friends were probably like, hey, I'm taking this and it's helping me out do this and blah 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 blah. Now before all of this, we had a Leila who was very overweight. She posts on her original Instagram, which you can still look up to this day, which is Leila Naghshine. I'm just not even gonna try to say it. Naghshine. She is basically going to have a whole profile that you see a completely different side of her. But one thing you'll see is that she was very overweight in 2012, and then in 2015 she competed, and then in 2016 she competed in her Epic competition, which is like a CrossFit Games kind of thing, and I'll have that pulled up here too. So we know that Leila came from a very disadvantaged place. She was overweight, and then she got on stage to compete. And we keep looking at these pictures. in time as it rolls around, and I'm assuming she gets more in depth into her physical appearance and her athletic performance. Found another video on her Instagram that was posted 388 weeks ago, just a little bit before that YouTube or after that YouTube video we just watched. Now if I play this, you'll hear a completely different voice again.
I truly think that coaching and personal training is learning how to have a good relationship. Both have the same goal, and they both... Hi everybody, my name's Layla. I wanted to do a short video to introduce myself.
Now you can start to hear a little bit of the voice that Layla has now. It's a little bit more raspy, deeper, and I would want you to specifically, again, this is not a dismerch at Layla or her appearance. I don't mind it, but the chin that she has, you can notice that her chin bones are a lot more pronounced. So there's other pictures where Layla is posting. She's talking about like her V taper and how she's happy with it, and she's talking about like her performance in the gym and how's post-show going. She talks about like post-show and how a lot of people have warned her not to eat and blah blah blah, excess body fat and all this stuff, and it's really cool to see. And she's actually pretty jacked, to be honest. Like her arms are jacked. She doesn't have much of a lower body, but she's got a jacked upper body and quite big arms, right? And is this indicative right now of someone who's using androgenic anabolic steroids? I think it might be. I think it might be a very low dose of Anavar, or at least the genesis of use of Anavar. Maybe she just started using. I think it's definitely the exposure to clenbuterol for sure. The reason I believe that is because you're coming from a very disadvantaged place as a female. You're getting into the competitive scene. You're seeing a lot of other girls using these things, clenbuterol, T3, ephedrine, you name it, and you're kind of wanting to dip your hand in the cookie jar when all these other girls are looking banger around you and they have some kind of answer that you might not have. You're going to want to dip your hand into that cookie jar. So again, this is another study I pulled up, and I just want to review one more time the signs of anabolic androgenic steroid abuse in women. Acne, hirsutism, which is hair growth, deepening of the voice, male pattern balding, so receding of the hairline, clitoromagaly, which means clitoral growth, breast atrophy, big one there, irregular menstrual cycles, infertility, signs of significant muscle growth, depression, and mood instability. I also have a video on this channel way back that I did on Brett Wilkins because his voice is kind of raspy, and it talks about how the use of high doses of anabolic androgen steroids in combination with IGF-1, there's a lot of receptivity in the larynx and can cause sort of edema within those muscle strands kind of around your throat. The other thing that study had talked about was that using a high dose of IGF-1 or a large dose of anabolic androgen steroid can alter our jaw's architectural shifting. And so you can see here that she has a jaw that looks pretty pronounced, right? In that video that I just pulled up of her talking on her Instagram, that thing is a lot bigger than it was back in that YouTube video, and her voice is sounding really normal and light and peppy. So then this brings me to the current video, which I'm going to pull up on my phone here, but you guys will see it on screen. This is one of the most recent videos that Layla has posted. I really want you to look at a couple things. One, she got a lot of surgery. Her nose is different. Her cheeks are different. I'm thinking she got her buccal fat removed. Possibly this could be completely made up. She obviously has some lip filler in. But we play this video, I want you to really listen to her voice.
So what's the day looking like today?
Gym, not lifting yet, so I'm just gonna walk. While I walk, I have like 3 things I need to review. Come back, shower, get ready. We need to film a video. Portfolio company check-in, interview with the CFO. My CFO's.
And if you look at the comments, it's really bad. First comment, that's my man. Dang, bro busy as fuck. Sick schedule, man. So handsome. This man is on his purpose. Get it? Can we acknowledge she looks good without makeup? That was like the random message. I closed my eyes and heard my husband talk. So obviously people are noticing this, and it's a real thing. And I commented on one of her posts a while back. I tried to find it, but it's in the dust now. I was like, Layla, please just talk about your past exposure to anabolic steroids. It's obvious Alex has used some. I didn't say that, but I said, hey, it'd probably be better to get ahead of this thing and just say, hey, this is what I did. It was an experimental phase of my life, blah, blah, blah. It would have been a lot better, and now instead people are coming to the conclusion that she's a trans girl, and there's a lot of articles online that insert this everywhere. I mean, they're saying it's official kind of business, and I think it's not so great. My personal belief, what is or had Alex Hormozi taken to get this kind of morphological change in her voice, jawline, and maybe even physique as well? More than likely, back in 2015, what was widely available for most females was things like clenbuterol and Anavar. I don't think it was much beyond that. I think she likely probably got some advice from a male AAS user who didn't know what he was doing, because 2015 was the wild, wild west when it related to anabolic androgenic steroids. There was very little information out, and honestly, it was poor information that was out. So she probably got some advice from a gym bro, and he said, hey, take 10 milligrams, take 15 milligrams of Anavar. And she did that for a prolonged period of time, probably got some good results, stepped on stage shortly after, stepped off stage, kept using it for a little bit, and then saw those morphological changes start to happen, noticed it, probably even received some comments about it, stopped taking everything altogether. That proceeded to maybe come into the circumventation of TRT for women. And now, if you don't know, I'm part of a hormone clinic called Rise HRT, and we prescribe women testosterone very regularly. But the thing is we're prescribing them doses of 2.5 to maybe 3 milligrams per week of testosterone. It is not very high at all. Back in the day, at the very beginning of TRT clinics, when there was no regulations at all, women, I know still actually women that are getting prescribed 10, 15, 20 milligrams, 30 milligrams of testosterone a week from clinics. I know women who are getting this stuff. And I imagine that maybe on the genesis of her productivity and wanting to be a little bit feel better, and maybe creating a situation where she developed PCOS during competing, she was depending on high doses of clenbuterol and felt kind of down that she wasn't experiencing those same results. It was like, hey, I'm going to try out this TRT route. This is just a hypothesis completely. She got to a doctor because she didn't want to get the virilizing effects that she had when she took the Anavar that her gym bro gave her. And so the doctor said, hey, we'll give you 20 milligrams of testosterone. You just inject it once a week, call it good. You'll be fine for the rest of your life. So she starts doing this, 3, 4, 5, 6, a year passes. She's been exposed to an extremely super physiological dose of testosterone. And the thing is she probably took it out when it was too late, right? Took it out, the enanthate ester, cypionate ester, whatever you have is going to be in there for exceeding 5 weeks. So she's under this area of curve of exposure that's really large to the androgens. So now, let's say she has a pretty good physique. You can look at her pictures, and to this day, she has a much better physique than she had even when she was in the bikini composition, in my opinion. In that bikini competition, she had like zero lower body, literally just like really jacked arms and a decent back. In the current day, she has decent, like a very big set of legs, I would say. Like, she's obviously training her legs and stuff, so there might be some hormonal use there still, but I just don't think, hopefully she would have wised up now at least as to the effects of improper use of hormones. But she probably got off the testosterone when it was too late, and that tail effect that we get from testosterone, and it kind of was like the finishing touches to those morphological changes, which led to her voice now, and ultimately led to the LEILA Hormozi that we all hear on social media. Take back everything now, go to the beginning of all this. What can you take away from this? Basically, smart female use of enhancement is very specific, and it's contextual to the female and what she's comfortable with, what she's capable of doing and sustaining for a very large period of time. This is critical, okay? A female should really follow the framework of using everything she can outside of androgenic steroids all the time. Right, so I'm talking about like deploying things like L-carnitine, telmisartan, clenbuterol, ephedrine, growth hormone, IGF-1. I mean, any various peptide, BPC 157, TB500, follistatin, insulin. I mean, metformin. You name it. She should be using things that are non-hormonal, or at least non-sex hormone manipulating. When she gets to a level which she could compete very well at a national level show, potentially at a bikini level, maybe, that is where she could deploy some hormones. Now, Anavar is great, and I think it has a really good place in females, and I think it actually is a good drug, and if dosed appropriately and gotten from a pharmaceutical source, you can reliably use it at a low dose of 2.5 to even 5 milligrams a day for an extended period of time. I wouldn't go above 16 weeks at all with a female at that dose. More importantly, what I'd want to do is start dosing a female with a physiologically available hormone already, which is testosterone. I'd like a female to take 5 milligrams of testosterone, pushing that up to maybe 10 milligrams a week. And now I'd say like, oh shit, women aren't supposed to take testosterone. But I mean, if you do the math, right, like 5 milligrams a day of Anavar is 35 milligrams a week. If I'm giving a girl 10 milligrams of testosterone a week, which is normal, man, we're taking 200% less, more than that, 200% less hormone, and there's less androgen systemically floating around. We have biologically available estrogen to balance out those pathways. I mean, we're pretty good, right? And that's going to be enough to push a woman just a little bit over the edge of super physiological and make very long-term progress. For like long times, long time. That is all you really need to get to a point where you can compete at a national level extremely well in a bikini class, in a wellness class, and maybe even a women's physique class, maybe, depending on your genetic proclivity. What happened back in 2015 was not many people knew about androgen use in females, not many people knew about all the other ancillaries available, and a lot of this stuff was deemed as like male stuff only, so females weren't going to take insulin, they weren't going to take IGF-1, they weren't going to take growth hormone. That's for males. They were going to take Anavar because that's a female drug. That was what it was labeled as. What we do now is a lot different, and it's something that I suggest everyone does, which is start with the minimal effective dose, then apply each of the minimal effective doses for each of the compounds that are non-sex hormone manipulating, and then if that, after a long period of time, has not gotten you the results that you necessarily need, then you deploy hormonal agents at that specific time. That is the key, that is the framework that's going to get you to succeed. And for a female, I just generally would say don't go over 30 milligrams of androgens total per week. If a female is not making a tremendous amount of progress on 30 milligrams a week, she's doing something wildly wrong. And you need to be making sure that she's following the program, eating correctly, so on and so forth. I'm curious of your thoughts. That's my opinion on what LEILA HORMOZI'S cycle was. We know that anabolic androgen steroids have the key signs and indications that, hey, you get a deeper voice, you get potential masculinizing appearances such as a larger jaw, distended forehead, so on. We know this. Clinical research is very clear about this. Do you think that LEILA HORMOZI had used hormones? And while we're at it, Alex's transformation doesn't seem natural to me. I don't think you would say the same either. I think it's probably not natural for most people viewing it. I think you'd be naive to think he is actually telling the truth when he says he was natural during that period of time. And do you think that maybe Alex Hormozi was the one that gave her anabolic androgenic steroids and potentially caused the issues that she has now? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I'm very curious about what you guys think about all this. I'm glad to have summarized it all, and I hope you find it very useful for yourself, and maybe you took some educational tools away from this video. I will see you in the next video. Deuces.